Hi friends, welcome. It's Tash with The Purposeful You. Today I'm under the pumpkin arch. Have you ever wondered if you can grow a pumpkin arch? Check this out. We actually did it this year and I want to share the details with you on how to do it from start to finish. And if you're new here, I'm Tasha with The Purposeful You. I love to create content around our backyard garden. I share some DIY projects and also just overall educating about growing your own garden to be a little more self-sufficient and also eat seasonally and bring these beautiful nutritious meals for our family into our home. So I hope that I can inspire you to grow, whether it's a small garden or a large garden, depending on where you live. I really appreciate you being here. So let's get started here and talk about this pumpkin arch. So this area was completely bare. There were sheep roaming here. There was a chicken coop there that was just falling apart. So we took the chicken coop down and we ended up finding out that the soil was full of clay and fill, and we realized it wasn't very healthy. So we took the tractor and we dug a 2-foot trench on each side to create this arch. We ended up filling it with compost-rich soil because pumpkins are really heavy eaters. So we dug a 10-foot long trench, but the actual pumpkin arch is only about 6 or 7 feet long. So you don't need a lot of space if you want to do something like this. You can even put an arch in between 2 vegetable garden beds if you have them about 4 feet apart. Okay, first up, let's talk about how we built the pumpkin arch. Our goal was to stay under $100, and we did it. I really wanted to reuse as much materials as we had on the property, and I found out that our fence paneling wasn't strong enough to hold pumpkins, so I did have to go and buy hog paneling. It's really thick gauge, and it's metal, which will last you years and years, so that you can have a pumpkin arch year after year. Then we reused 6 metal fence posts. We cut them to size, and we put them down in the ground about at least a foot. Then we weaved in the hog paneling at the bottom to create this arch and to have some support. We ended up having a little bit extra fence paneling to put around the bottom so that the pumpkins would find something to start growing up against, as the hog paneling wasn't quite long enough. So the arch itself is about 7 feet wide, and you can see here you really need that room because the leaves are so large. If you want to hang out under here or have a picnic table, it would be nice to have this amount of space. However, you can plant a pumpkin arch in between your garden beds if you have at least 4-foot wide paths. Okay, now that we talked about how we built the actual arch, let's talk about planting the pumpkins. Pumpkins are heavy eaters, so you will want to use some compost-rich soil or even just pure compost. I started planting the pumpkins back in March indoors. I planted 8 plants, 1 died, ended up having 7 plants in the end, and in June I went to go plant them outside. They were in pots for way too long, and that was my biggest regret. So as soon as they are big enough to be planted outside, make sure you get them outside. Usually I'd plant them when they have at least 3 or 4 true leaves, meaning 3 or 4 pretty big leaves. You also want to look at the weather. I was really worried that June might be wet, so I didn't want to put the pumpkins out in May and then they would just get soggy and die. But I really wish I did plant them in May because we had the hottest May. So just know that each year is different. You never know what the weather's going to do, but to always have a backup plan, which is plant them directly in the soil. So I ended up planting all 7 of the starters outside. 2 or 3 of them died. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity for planting this arch and having it really full. So I ended up direct seeding 2 pumpkin plants on each side, making it 5 pumpkin plants on each side of the arch. So there's 10 in total. That way I knew if 1 or 2 died, I would still have this magical look. As the season went on, I realized that the plants I started inside weren't doing as well as the plants that I direct seeded. So next year, I would actually just do direct seed with maybe 3 or 4 starter plants just to make sure that I had this variety.
The other thing I want to mention is I planted them about a foot apart, which is very, very tight spacing, but it worked and they had no problem competing. As long as you make sure that you are helping the vine grow up rather than along the ground.
So now that you know there's 10 pumpkin plants in here, how was the journey? What happened throughout the summer? Well, let me tell you. I realized that the ones I started by seed indoors didn't do as well as the pumpkins I direct seeded straight outdoors in mid-June. So this wasn't even full in the summertime. It's really been the last month. I would say mid-August is when it really took off and the pumpkins just started growing. It started off with 1 or 2 pumpkins and I was so excited in July to see a few pumpkins starting. And then the trellis wasn't that big. There wasn't a lot of leaves and I thought, oh, I don't know if it's gonna reach the top. We'll see what happens. But at the beginning of August, it just took off. So give your pumpkin arch some time to grow. So make sure you don't take out any plants, because 2 plants that I was gonna take out ended up having the most magical little pumpkins on them. So you just never know what's gonna happen. Wait till the end of the season before you really judge what it's going to do. The goal is to have the vines grow up the hog paneling as natural as possible without so many ties or wiring holding it up. So I would come out here every few days or every week and just weave it through as it was really taking off to make sure it was supporting itself. I don't know if you know this, but as the pumpkins grow, the stems and the vines get stronger. So it's this magical thing called nature that actually holds up the pumpkins, and I never even netted them. I didn't hold them up with anything, and they have not fallen, and I've read a lot of articles with other people saying that their pumpkins do not fall because the plant naturally strengthens over time. So as I was weaving the pumpkins, I could also see which pumpkins might be growing in between the hog paneling. You can see here that I did miss a couple and it grew in between the paneling. So it's gonna be a little bit funky shape. However, I can still eat this pumpkin, so that is no problem. But make sure that you actually go through your pumpkins and try to get them above the paneling or below the paneling so they don't get stuck and squished in the middle. I don't know if you noticed, but I also have beans growing in here. I thought it would be so cool to have these purple beans and these pink pumpkins. Well, I will not plant beans again because they just really tried to grow as much as possible, and I might have 20 beans in total, and there was 6 plants in here. So that was an experiment that I will not do again. However, it was really cool to see these purple beans growing in between these pink pumpkins. The other surprise I had was these pumpkins grew so big. They're supposed to be small to medium. However, some of them are going to be at least 15 pounds. Let's talk about how I took care of the pumpkin arch throughout the summer. I did nothing. I honestly didn't do anything. So it's not a high maintenance statement in your garden. I didn't even prune any leaves. I didn't cut any vines to make sure it was growing up a certain way. I just kept naturally making it go up the hog paneling so that I didn't have to do very much and that it would just naturally do its thing. I couldn't believe the size of the leaves, and it really filled in August. So just know that it will take some time to fill in, but at the end of August, beginning of September, you're gonna have this beautiful pumpkin arch that you can have a little picnic under, or just make a statement in your garden like I've mentioned, that other people will love to come and see. So now that we've talked about how we built the arch, how we planted the pumpkins, and how we took care of the pumpkin plants over the summer, now I want to harvest our very first pumpkin with you. Before I show you how we're going to harvest our first pumpkin, I want to tell you that I ended up planting flowers in front of the arch to make a little bit more of a statement. I planted some zinnias and cosmos, and they have just flourished and made such a beautiful border as you enter your pumpkin arch. The pumpkin we're going to harvest is the first one that grew. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, huge. Oh my gosh, way bigger than I thought. Yes. Okay, here's the first one. How exciting. It is a beauty. We did it. We picked our first pumpkin together. Thanks so much for joining me. I had so much fun sharing our journey of this pumpkin arch. I can't wait to do one next year. And actually, the big tip here I want to give to you at the end of this video was how I'm going to actually plant it next year, which is going to be different than this year. So what am I gonna do? I'm actually only gonna start maybe 2 or 4 plants inside, and I'm gonna direct seed at least 6 plants next year because they were so much stronger. So depending on where you live, I would do a hybrid, start some inside, direct sow some, and let's see what happens because that's the magic of nature. You never know what's gonna happen. So like this video if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, and I hope you do a pumpkin arch next year. Have fun with it. We'll see you next time.